Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Hospital bosses face angry questions from families who lost babies in the East Kent maternity scandal.
We don't believe them, and if we don't chase them down, and with the help of the media and the pressure of the public, we will make it happen because they answer to the public, and that's what we're going to do.
Taking to the busy streets of Brighton and Hove to keep people safe on a night out. We're on patrol with the dedicated marshals looking out for those who may be drunk or vulnerable.
How do you feel right now? Do you feel bad?
Also this Friday, airlines and travel agents tell us business is booming for the half-term getaway. That's despite the cost of living crisis.
And a big surprise for rangers in Kent Woodland. The first wild bison born in the UK for thousands of years. Good evening. Families who lost babies because of failings in maternity care in East Kent have told senior managers they're in complete denial about the scale of the problem.
Members of the public were able to question executives at a public NHS board meeting in Ashford this morning, following the publication of the damning Kirkup report earlier this week.
It concluded 45 babies born in Margate and Ashford could have survived if their care had been up to national standards. With more, here's Kit Bradshaw.
We remember him all the time. He's part of our family. My daughter has 3 children. You know, he's there all the time. We're going to celebrate his birthday in a few days' time. He is always in our heart, and we're fighting for him as we would all of our grandchildren, exactly the same.
A grandfather still grieving for his grandson 10 years on, and still angry at the failings in baby Ashton's care at the William Harvey Hospital, where he died.
There were absolute failings in clinical care almost from the get-go on this particular case. And then when we brought those failings during the pregnancy and after the death of Ashton to the management disregarded it. And the senior nurse at the time said, "Everyone take your name badges off. This guy's taken everybody's names."
Phil Linehan from Dymchurch was one of dozens of affected family members who attended the first public board meeting of the East Kent Hospitals Trust since the Kirkup report was published.
I don't think this is easy. Changing culture and behaviours will take us time, but if we can work with you, I think we can, and work with our governors and our non-execs and our executive colleagues, we can. I'm optimistic we can bring this about.
This meeting was scheduled to last an hour but ran to more than double that duration. Such were the number of contributions from members of the public.
This trust is in complete present denial of the size of the problem.
I haven't heard anything today from you that sounds like leadership.
Neil and I are as one, absolutely committed to have a board that recognises the issues that we're presented with, understands the reality of that, accepts it, and can find a way forward.
What did you make of the answers you heard today from the chairman and the chief executive?
Sadly, we've heard them before, and we don't believe them. We don't believe them, and if we don't chase them down, and with the help of the media and the pressure of the public, we will make it happen because they answer to the public. We need justice for Ashton, of course we do, but it doesn't just end there. People need to have the confidence in this trust and every trust that when they go, they get the best possible care.
Phil Linehan ending that report by Kit Bradshaw. A former Kent Police Community Support Officer has been sentenced for pursuing a sexual or improper relationship with a woman he met during his work. Thomas Daly, who's 50 and was based in Canterbury, attended her home in response to a noise complaint and then texted her 119 times the next day. He's been given a suspended sentence for misconduct in public office.
A small number of diphtheria cases have been reported at a migrant processing centre in Manston. The highly contagious bacterial infection is rare in the UK and can sometimes be fatal. The Home Office said it's working to ensure the instances are contained.
An airline hired to carry migrants from the UK to Rwanda has pulled out of operating any further such flights after pressure from campaigners. The government used a plane run by Privileged Style when it tried to remove people in June for the first time, but the flight was grounded at the last minute after legal challenges.
A stalker from West Malling has been jailed for more than 4 years following a campaign of harassment against a woman. Marcus Towner, who's 30, repeatedly threatened to harm his victim and frequently showed up at her address. He's also been convicted of unrelated drugs charges.
Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and even Boris Johnson have emerged as the three main contenders to be the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister.
Liz Truss resigned yesterday after just 44 days in the job. Those wanting to replace her need support from at least 100 Tory MPs, and they have until Monday to get the backing they need. Here's political correspondent Harry Horton.
Well, not many MPs here in Westminster today, many of them back in their constituencies for the weekend, but almost all Conservative members of Parliament are on their phones, taking calls, making calls as this leadership contest is well underway. The front runner at this very early stage appears to be Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor. Also standing is Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House of Commons. She's picked up support from a number of MPs. And then there is Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, who is being encouraged by a number of his colleagues to throw his hat in the ring and make an unlikely comeback to number 10 Downing Street. He is popular among party members, but he is incredibly divisive among Conservative members of Parliament. Here's what MPs from our region have been telling us about who they're backing in this race.
I'm backing Penny Mordaunt. I backed her in the last election, and I'm backing her again because I'm consistent, because I believe that she's got experience. She's been Secretary of State for Overseas Development. She's been Defence Secretary. She's now leader of the House. She's doing a very good job. She is consensual. She is a team player. She'll bring people together. She'll make a great chairman of the board with, I hope, Jeremy Hunt as the Chief Executive, Chancellor of the Exchequer. If Mr. Johnson were to come back, I would have no option but to resign the whip.
Well, it's a busy weekend ahead with all sorts of horse trading and backroom deals underway before Monday. Candidates in this election need to get the support of 100 MPs by 2 p.m. It will then be whittled down to a list of just 2 contenders, and party members will then get to decide over the course of the week who they want to be the next Prime Minister. By this time next Friday, we should have someone else in number 10.
Harry Horton reporting there. Now, whether they're drunk, distressed or both, newly recruited night safety marshals are looking out for people who may be vulnerable on the streets of Brighton and Hove.
A team goes out every Friday and Saturday night when the city's bars and clubs are at their busiest. The marshals, who work closely with Sussex Police, aim to get people to safety and out of harm's way. Tom Savides has been on night shift with the team.
Greg, he's just admitted to taking MDMA, mate.
What MDMA have you taken?
Greg Miranda and Nick Strickland are on the lookout for vulnerable people. They spot a young man lying on the pavement in West Street, home to some of Brighton's busiest bars and clubs. He tells them he's been drinking and has taken drugs.
My friend, you need to come outside and help your friends.
Using his phone, the marshals try to contact his friends inside a club. When that fails, they take him to a designated safe space to keep him out of harm's way.
You've got your phone here, okay? It's regular. I think any sort of nighttime economy situation like that, Friday, Saturdays, it's going to happen. We're just purely here to help.
I think it's getting more and more regular. I think the stuff that we come across is more and more like people drink to the point where they are like that, legless, and then they don't know what's going on, and they're by themselves.
These are the night safety marshals on patrol on the streets of Brighton and Hove. They're funded by Sussex Police, who work closely with them to keep people safe on Friday and Saturday nights.
people are going back home as well. Do they need that help and support? You know, if you don't regularly come to the city, do you know where the taxi rank is? Do you know how to get home? Do you know where the train station is? But it is also there to be a visible presence. You know, actually, you should appreciate if there's a visible presence there, crime less likely to happen.
As well as dealing with those who've had too much to drink, the marshals are also looking for those who may be vulnerable or missing. Suspected troublemakers are also reported. A man wanted on recall to prison is spotted by the door security of a pub.
You got a photo? Yeah, I think that's it.
They relay the information to the marshals, who inform the police. A few moments later, a man is arrested. Thousands of revellers hit the clubs and bars of Brighton every weekend. The majority do end up safely back home, but some do require help and support, and that's where the night safety marshals come in. One of these young women is distressed after being refused entry to a club. She's threatening to run away from her friend, so the marshals decide to escort her back to her hotel.
I don't know what's happened. I'm just saying doing this isn't going to achieve anything. I don't want you to get in trouble.
On the other side of the street, a couple are arguing with door staff. Greg and Nick step in to try to calm the situation.
Bro. It's just make sure you're getting home safe.
Oh, that's so nice.
The majority of revellers do not need help, but having the marshals around is reassuring.
We make sure we cover all areas.
Having people like this that are impartial and neutral can be really useful to people that don't have anywhere to go, to find someone that's safe and like UV, to know how to get home, especially young girls with the spiking in Greece. So.
Especially in such a massive city with such a massive student population, I think it will really help.
Brighton's nightlife may be booming after COVID restrictions were lifted. So as more people hit the streets, the pressure is on to keep people safe. Tom Savides, ITV News, Brighton.
Now, despite concerns over the cost of living crisis, one area that seems to be continuing to see a bounce back following the pandemic is the travel industry.
With half-term next week, travel agents and airlines have told ITV News Meridian they're still seeing a surge in bookings. With more, here's James Dunham.
Passengers flooding into departures on the busiest day of the half-term at Gatwick. While the country's finances are firmly in the red, a shrinking economy contrasts this airport's focus on growth.
At the end of the month, Bamboo Airlines start here, they're new, flying to Hanoi. We've got a second daily flight from JetBlue to New York at the end of the month as well. So it's great to see the airlines coming back or new airlines starting here as well. We're fortunate that London, the southeast, is a very wealthy area in the whole of Europe. So we're seeing people continue to travel and we hope they continue to do so.
The airport says flights now serve 90% of its pre-COVID destinations as countries ease travel restrictions. From today, Spain has dropped all entry requirements. A lot, of course, has happened in 2 years. Back in 2020, the South Terminal at Gatwick was cut off from international travel. Today, passenger numbers resemble pre-pandemic levels. But could the cost of living derail this industry's recovery? Research shows 35% of people plan to cut back on holiday spend in the next year, with 19% planning a UK trip instead, and 14% choosing not to go away at all.
I think there'll be a huge staycation again within 2023 because of the cost of going abroad and the pound being so weak just now.
This ticket cost me at least 3 times more than I usually pay for my flights.
Because we've come out of COVID and things, it's still, you kind of want to get away, so it might be that you might have to look at maybe closer destinations like Europe maybe.
This independent travel agent in East Grinstead is bargaining on the COVID bounce back continuing.
People are very, very keen to travel. They haven't travelled for 3 years. We do, for example, a lot of bookings to Australia and New Zealand where especially the elderly wants to see their family, their grandchildren.
The buzz within these busy terminal buildings is creating optimism despite the soaring inflation overhead.
And James is still at Gatwick Airport for us this Friday evening and sent this.
Well, the mood here today has certainly been buoyant, but of course the fragility of this sector is not too distant in people's memories. Aviation was one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. EasyJet, the largest carrier here, was quite comfortable actually at pointing out to me that its balance sheet is in a very strong position. They say that its debts are low, and because it's been able to hedge fuel, which means it's been bought at a low price and stockpiled, that it's quite comfortable to ride the wave over the next few months. Now, you could say that the airport and airlines are putting on a brave face, and despite the concerns from passengers about their finances, there is nothing to suggest at the moment in terms of passenger numbers and bookings that there are any real warning signs about how the next few months will play out through this economic storm.
James Allen reporting there.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, how Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club is supporting people living with cancer.
And a pioneering Kent rewilding project welcomes the first wild bison born in the UK for centuries.
And you can find more on today's top stories in the region throughout the day on our website. Go to itv.com/Meridian. You can always give us a phone call. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
Attitudes which discriminate against women wanting a career in the music industry are to be explored as part of a parliamentary inquiry.
The Women and Equalities Committee is calling on women to share their experiences in the hopes of challenging misogyny in the sector. Manifa Bob Simon reports.
Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly. If you want, don't you...
As a talented singer with millions of plays on streaming platforms, Abby Flynn from Brighton has seen the good and the bad in the music industry. That includes experiencing misogyny, which she says is common amongst artists.
It's so normalised in all of us, this kind of misogynistic undertone of most industries, but the music industry. And I remember like performing on stage and even me normalising people coming up and thinking they can just invade your space or like even touch. And it's only like really recently, in recent years, that I've become a mother and I've realised how not okay that is.
And Abby's not alone. There's now a push to understand the problem on a wider scale. Earlier this year, the Women and Equalities Committee opened up a call for evidence of misogyny in the UK music industry. The inquiry aims to examine what misogynistic attitudes exist and why. Founders of the UK's first safe space recording studio for women called on people to submit their stories.
We really pushed to gather as many responses as we could, because from a personal perspective, as women in the music industry, we know it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to say, this thing happened to me. And there's a lot of reasons why, valid reasons why people won't talk about what happened to them, because they might lose their job.
We need to see legislation drawn up or independent bodies created to actually have spaces where we can be more accountable and actually get some accountability within the music industry. Harassment against women and girls, the experiences that women and girls have in the music industry is, from a statistics point, worse than it is in the general population. So clearly there's something, and there's more that needs to be done.
A recent report by the Incorporated Society of Musicians examined discrimination in the music sector. Its responses had very worrying trends.
Unfortunately, nearly 700 responses, 66% of those respondents had experienced discrimination and harassment. Most of them are women. So there's a real cultural issue in the music industry. Research, it's really important for us to know exactly where we are, and then we can acknowledge there's a huge problem so we can do something positive about it.
While a date hasn't yet been set for any findings of the inquiry to be published, campaigners continue to call for change sooner rather than later. Monifa Bob Simon, ITV News.
And the ITV Evening News continues here at 6:30 with more Lucrezia Millerini.
Coming up, the race is on to number 10. Could Britain's next Prime Minister be the return of the last? Defence Secretary Ben Wallace today ruled himself out for the Conservative leadership, and he signalled his support for a Boris Johnson comeback. We'll have the latest on the runners and riders. Also ahead, dire staff shortages in hospitals and care homes, a warning from the regulator of gridlock for those needing urgent care. And
yeah, I'm happy with that. All can be awarded. Check complete.
behind the scenes in the control room as VAR controversially goes live in the Scottish Premiership tonight. Well, join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Right, let's stick with a bit of sport and Mel Blore. Mel, Gillingham, really tough start to the season, but things are looking up.
They most certainly are, and that's because now the Gills have gone 6 games unbeaten after coming from behind to draw against league leaders Stevenage last weekend. And they'll be looking to extend their run of form when they take on Barrow at Priestfield tomorrow. Boss Neil Harris says there's a good feeling around the club at the moment.
We just want to keep the momentum going, and I use that word a lot, momentum, and use that in football. And the fact we're 6 unbeaten, scored 5 games in a row, again, might seem minor to some people, but for us, as we're growing as a group, now it's vital.
Well, elsewhere in League 2 tomorrow, Crawley will be looking to climb out of the relegation zone when they take on Mansfield at home, while in the Premier League, Brighton head to the Etihad to take on Manchester City. Now, a scheme in Sussex, led by the charity arm of Brighton Football Club, Albion in the Community, has been rolled out across the whole county. The Brighter Outlook programme supports anyone with a cancer diagnosis, offering fitness advice and the opportunity to speak to others who are going through treatment. And as Sarah Gomm found out, one coach is especially well qualified to lead the class.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
The participants at this Brighter Outlook session all have their own stories to tell. Each are at varying stages of treatment and recovery. And their coach, Kieran Malabar-Weeks, is perfectly placed to empathise, having been through his own journey with cancer. Diagnosed with a tumour on his brain at the age of 16, Kieran underwent a gruelling course of treatment under specialist care at the Royal Marsden, where he met the now Prince and Princess of Wales on what was their first official engagement as a couple. After chemotherapy, a lengthy operation and radiotherapy, Kieran was eventually given the all-clear.
Love just sitting talking to people and helping, but particularly with the cancer side of things, I know what they're going through. If it's, if they're feeling sort of sick a few days after chemo, I've been there. It's not nice, so I can empathise with them in that sense, which is really invaluable really for the Brighter Outlook programme, I think, as well. To have that support from someone who knows what they're going through is amazing.
There were times when Kieran, who'd been a collegiate golfer with a promising future in the game, feared a life in sport might be out of reach. He has, though, discovered a passion for helping those with cancer maintain their strength.
Taking charge of your own health by doing something external is I think just from a mental health point of view, it's a massive help.
It's really great because the patients can relate to him and he can relate to them, and he knows exactly what they've been through, what they're going through.
Natalia Campilos is recovering from treatment for a cancer of the womb.
It's really just what I need. It's a very gentle, no pressure environment. Kieran's fantastic, super friendly, super accommodating. I think it does make a difference, the fact that he's experienced, what we're going through or what we've been through, definitely.
This Albion in the Community programme is now available free of charge across Sussex, supporting anyone living with cancer. Sarah Gomm, ITV News, Lancing.
What a fantastic initiative, changing lives through the power of football. Love it.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Mel. Now, what better news to bring you on a Friday than of the birth of a little baby girl.
Yes, and it just happens that this toddler is the first of her kind to be born in the world, in the UK, for thousands of years, if ever.
Rangers at a new conservation project outside Canterbury were shocked to find the baby bison when recently doing their rounds. The pitter-patter of tiny hooves now ringing out across ancient woodland. Here's Andy Dickinson.
Deep in the heart of Canterbury's ancient forests, a new arrival, the likes of which perhaps has never been seen before. European bison were on the brink of extinction after the First World War. This one certainly taking rangers by surprise.
I could see something moving, so I decided, right, I'm going to move in for a little bit of a closer look. Saw Mum, and I thought, OK, what's that behind her? This little head popped out from behind Mum, and sure enough, it was a little baby calf. I was absolutely over the moon. I couldn't believe it. It was one of those things where I think you're just in shock.
This unique project has brought bison raised in captivity in Scotland and Ireland to help combat the climate and biodiversity crises in Kent. This little one's mother concealing her pregnancy when arriving in the summer as a way of protecting herself from predators.
We were certainly planning on building our herd numbers. It wouldn't be true to say I was expecting it at this time, but nevertheless it's extremely exciting and we are so pleased.
They've already started to have an impact on the habitat. They've created tracks and pathways which has opened up the canopy already. They've been dust bathing, which is creating flattened areas within the reserve, which is great for basking animals like reptiles, for example, but also invertebrates. And they've been munching on the bark, which over time, this is going to create the standing deadwood, which is so valuable for a whole host of different species.
To have experienced that firsthand was something that I'll never forget, and it's something that you just wanted to shout from the treetops and tell everybody about. So we're really privileged, so lucky, and she's so adorable. She's an amazing little thing, so we couldn't be happier.
The baby will soon be joined by a bull from Germany, together with Exmoor ponies and Iron Age pigs, regenerating these ancient woodlands and creating plenty more places to play. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Canterbury.
Good news, let's hope for some more now. Here's the weather with Chris Page.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Yes, after seeing a fairly mixed week for many with an autumnal feel, for the weekend, the autumnal feel is here to stay. Very mild through the weekend, but a story of two halves. Largely dry and bright on Saturday. We do see the return of some rather heavy rain for all of us as we head towards Sunday. We've got a ridge of high pressure with us as we go through the first half of the weekend. That brings us to fairly fine weather, but you'll notice down towards the southwest, this area of low pressure driving in further bands of quite heavy rain, and that brings us a much wetter end to the weekend and an unsettled start to next week. Over the next few hours, some squally weather starting to push its way through. Heavy rain for a time, that will lead to some spray on the roads, but as we go through the second half of the night, apart from the odd isolated shower towards the east coast of Kent, I do think for many of us a dry night to come with some clearer skies, but a very mild start to Saturday, temperatures 12 to 13 degrees. As we go through much of tomorrow, though, we hold on to the sunshine, a lovely dry, fine and sunny day to come. The autumnal feel will feel quite pleasant in that sunshine as well, with the winds coming in from a southerly direction, staying fairly light and highs around 17 to near 19 degrees Celsius. That's well above average for the time of year. I hear times of high water for tomorrow, looking at Dover there at 9:57 tomorrow morning, and again 18 minutes past 10 tomorrow evening. As we go through the rest of the weekend, we start to see this band of areas of low pressure pushing in heavy bands of rain as we go through the second half of Sunday. That will bring a wetter end to the weekend, and then we stay with that unsettled theme as we go into the start of the new working week. Of course, for some of us it is half term, and the best day so far looks to be Tuesday. Take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
In a moment, the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millerini.
From the team here, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, won't you? See you Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.